I would like to build upon how the concept of limitation of knowledge and understanding that was stipulated by Kant and Ghazali, Imam Ghazali as well, how that has impacted literature which is a reflection of life, literature which is a representation of our emotions, our values, our culture. And as it was said before, that what is culture? Culture is everything that we breathe in. If reality is not as it is perceived, it is not what we perceive, it is something different. Phenomenon is different from noumenon. Then how is it presented in literature? So what we find in modern literature is that the form dissolves. In traditional literature, in novel, in drama, there used to be a beginning, a middle, and an end. Whereas in modern literature and postmodern literature, there is no beginning, there is no middle, there is no end, there is no conclusion. The movement, the structure of the novel or the drama is circular. There is no conclusive end. There is uncertainty. And not only in literature, we find the same thing in paintings as well. If we look at, modern paintings, in abstract paintings, we find that there are no forms. Look at Pablo Picasso's Guernica. It represents the brutality of war, the mass massacre, the deadliest conflicts, that wreak havoc on humanity. But does he portray the dead bodies? No, it's a monstrous body. It's a monster that he presents, that he paints with heavy claws. And there are, mutilated their body parts in his claws and in his mouth. So this is, a representation which doesn't have any form because it represents the formless, the disorderly world that modern man is confronting and cannot really cope with. Another thing is, in modern novel, we find that there is not just one narrator. In traditional novel, there used to be an omniscient narrator, a narrator who knows everybody, who is everywhere, who can talk about and who can represent the feelings of every character. But in modern literature, in modern novel, we find as many as 30, 40 narrators. The same story, the same event is narrated by multiple narrators. And with each narrator, there is a different perspective. Because as has been observed that, the observer, the way the observer perceives and observes reality changes. The perspective changes. And then another thing, another impact of this lopsided, exclusive emphasis on reason, on empiricism, on positivism, which declined science into scientism, was that the heroic concept of the grandeur of human beings, that is, human beings are born with a purpose in life. Human beings have a place in the universe. And to say that human beings are nothing is to challenge the wisdom of God, the divine wisdom. God created universe with a purpose and gave, human beings a purpose in life. So these characters in modern literature, we find them to be pygmies. They're not heroes like the heroes we find in Greek tragedy or in Shakespearean tragedy. They are dwarfs. They are sterile. They're murderers. They're thieves. And they don't have any vision of life. They don't have any purpose in life. They don't have any lofty aim in life. And if you read absurd drama, you'll find that there are no women, no children in this drama. Whereas if we look at Shakespearean comedy, there is always, love, and there is consummation of love, and there is marriage. That is, there is continuation of life, procreation of life. Life pushes on. All the obstacles, they are overcome. But in modern drama, especially in absurd drama, there are no women. If there are women, either they are 80 years of age or they're prostitutes. In other words, they are not the creative forces of life. So this was, you see, the negative impact of pessimism that overtook Al-Ghazali at one point in his life, when he felt that he has utilized all the intellectual tools to the best of his capacity. He was the master of rhetoric, he was the master of grammar, he was the master of logic. And yet, and he was very, you see, he was clever, as you see, it has been said by Idris Saab that, you see, he was the chair. I mean, it was like being the chair of Harvard University. And yet, a point came in his life when he renounced everything, went out on a journey, that was Riyazat, and he started sweeping the mosques of Iraq. It is like, you see, a scholar of Harvard, the chair of a Harvard, becoming a janitor in a cathedral. So that is, you see, when he discovered that when your heart is deadened, your intellect cannot help you, because intellect traps you, imprisons you in conceit, in self-conceit. And that all his life he had been, you see, running after applause, fame, renown, what is called scholars for dollars nowadays. And that was the moment of realization that, you see, his knowledge was limited. His knowledge was also futile. So this futility of knowledge is an important theme. And I would like to make a few references to Western literature to give you an example of John Stuart Mill, who wrote the famous, you see, treatise on liberty. He writes in his autobiography that when he was around 20 years of age, there was a crisis in his life. Somewhat like the crisis in Al-Ghazali. Of course, they cannot be the same similarity because it was not really a spiritual experience. It was more of an emotional and psychological experience. But he felt suicidal because he was brought up on utilitarian education, one-sided education that his father, James Mill, and Jeremy Bentham had instilled in him, the founder of utilitarianism. The emphasis on the greatest happiness of greatest mankind. But again, you see, there was a compromise on moral values. Because as you see, Idris Saab has very beautifully given the example of that railway. That if a few people can be killed for the good of more people, fine, let them be killed. But Mill could not accept this idea. He felt very empty. He felt himself emotionally drained. He felt as if life is meaningless. And what rescued him? Whereas Al-Ghazali was rescued by, you see, the divine help. His heart was enlightened. Stuart Mill wasn't so lucky. He could not find a murshid. He could not embark on that Sufi path. Nevertheless, what rescued him was the poetry of Wordsworth. Because that, you see, taught him the value of emotions in human life. That reason is not everything. Sensory data is not everything. And that is how, you see, he overcame that pessimism, which is one of the dominant themes in modern literature. Pessimism, nihilism, cynicism, anxiety, depression, angst, existential dread. These are the main themes. And what is the cause of these themes? Because the heart is not enlightened by that noor. That noor that Sophia Karam talk of. As Maulana Rumi says about his Masnavi, that this is, you see, the pasture for hearts. This is like the river Nile. It can nourish you. This is the resting place for seekers of God. And then you see, to give you another example from Edvard Munch, who was a Norwegian painter, an artist. I mean, I'm just trying to give you examples of different artists and writers and philosophers who suffered from this depression and loneliness simply because their hearts were not enlivened by revelation, by divine light. And as Al-Ghazali says, that the heart, if it is deadened, then the result is catastrophic for individuals and for societies as well. And we have seen it that in Her Excellency talked about Gaza and about, Kashmir and about, the apathy of humanity at large. We know that in the 2 world wars, according to one estimate, between 87 to 101 million people were killed. So you see, when you move away from heart which tells you to be humble, to be compassionate, to love fellow human beings, then the result is, destruction, and which can be justified by saying collateral, damage is inevitable. No, it cannot be justified. It cannot be rationalized. So another example that I will give you is that of a Norwegian artist, a painter, Edvard Munch. Another person, very renowned, but he suffered from depression, and one of the most famous paintings by Munch is titled Scream. So if you just Google it, you'll find this painting, and you find it that this is, the painting represents a faceless, ghost-like face, agonized in the act of screaming against a turbulent, yellowish, orangish sky. I mean, these are the colors which denote anger, frustration, anxiety, depression. So what is this, the title, Scream? This painting is all about, modern man who's screaming and there's no one to listen to him. This is the apathy that surrounds us. We cannot connect with fellow human beings because everybody has become so self-absorbed. And Melville, he was an American writer, and in a very short poem, somewhat like haiku, not haiku, but a very short poem, he says, he addresses the universe. He says, hey, listen to me. I exist here. He's trying to draw the attention of God, if that power, whatever powers there are, if they can be called God. He says, hey, I exist. And the answer is, so what? I don't care if you exist. This is not the God of the Sufis. Sufi Akram believe in God of love. And if we cry aloud to God, He is sure to listen and to respond and to rescue. And I will end up on Al-Ghazali's, remedy for a dead heart. And that is that we have to be cognizant of our final end all the time, the final destination. And he says that a heart that is purified from pride is likely to gallop along the way to God. Because a vain person has to simply hold a mirror to admire himself, whereas a proud and arrogant man has to have another human being to look down upon, to slander, to suppress, to oppress, to exploit, to feel elated. And this is how this is germinated, rippled off in society to exploit others. So first of all, we have to purify hearts with the love of God. And this is one of the main objectives of this conference, to disseminate this lesson of love. And I congratulate Sahib Dada Sahab, the organizers, for organizing such a wonderful conference to achieve these ends. Thank you so much.